Good evening and welcome to the Taco Society Presents. I'm here with my great co-hosts once again, Gardner, Sydney, and Phil. We've got one heck of a show for you tonight. We've got three guests we're going to be interviewing. Kyle Rader, Dan Keohane, and Patrick Lacey.
That's an easy one.
Please join us and we'll begin these interviews right now. Thank you. We've got our first guest for tonight, Dan Slow Train.
Slow Train, Slow Train.
Keohane. I'm going to read a little bit about Dan and give you a little bit of his background and his bio, and then from there, Gardner's going to sit there and interview you while you sit there. How's that?
I don't recall.
He's going to talk to his attorney before he answers.
Dan lives in Princeton, Mass., and is the Stoker-nominated author of Plague of Darkness, Solomon's Grave, and the critically acclaimed Margaret's Art, which I have read and has been, I thought it was a fantastic book.
Oh,
Great
awesome.
book. Margaret's Ark. Under the pen name of G. Daniel Gunn, he has released the novel Destroyer of Worlds, and with L.L. Soares has co-written Nightmare in Grease Paint, which I have also read.
Really?
Yeah. His short stories have appeared in Cemetery Dance, Shroud, Apex, and many more. He is also the co-editor of the recent anthology Wicked Tales, and I have to thank you once again for including my story in there. That was really nice of you.
Great
Thank
story.
you.
Oh, no, that's a great
thank
story.
you.
You
Yes.
should be in there.
I'm going to turn this over to Gard.
All right, Dan, great to have you here, man.
Good being here, guys.
Known you for so long, and first thing I ever read by you, I think, was The Monkey in the Towers.
Oh,
And,
yeah? That's
yeah,
right.
and short story. And for those people who don't know, I used to do a radio program in Manchester. And the story The Monkey in the Towers is based around the very towers of the radio station that used to put the signal out for my show.
Wow.
So meeting the guy who wrote the story, I was like, I got to get you on that station. That was so much fun.
That was funny.
That
I'm
was
so
good
psyched.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
was
for
a fun
people,
story.
if they want to look up your name, I'm just going to hold up my copy of Solomon's Grave. Remember, please, everybody, it's Keohane. Oh, yeah, there's a new version. Oh, yeah.
Zoom in.
Plague of Darkness, bigger letters.
It'll appear on the screen.
Yeah, great.
Oh,
and
even better.
Yeah.
because it sounds like Keohane, but if like on the radio, I used to say Keohane just so people would know, but it's Dan Keohane.
Well, in Ireland, it's Keohane.
Yeah, oh, it is.
Yeah, so
Okay.
I wish they'd kept pronunciation. We'd never have to spell the name.
Yeah, you wouldn't have to do that. So, okay, I have some just quick questions for you, and actually, I want to talk about your alter ego
Ooh.
and your because you write under two names.
You don't want to talk about him. Yes, you do. No, don't talk. Be quiet. Oh, yes, talk to me. I'm ready now.
He puts double the output. It's like amazing. So you write under your own name, Dan Keohane,
Right.
but you also write under the name G. Daniel Gunn.
Gunn.
G-U-N-N.
Yeah.
Can you tell people why there is a difference and the advantages and disadvantages to that?
Well, I mean, it probably the main keyword is branding. When Solomon's Grave was my first novel that was released, and I followed that up with Margaret's Ark, and so both are, I guess, biblical in theme. They're suspense. They're like Solomon's Grave deals with the Ark of the Covenant buried in basically Princeton, even though I changed the name. Margaret's Ark is about what if the Great Flood happened today. So all these, my stories were always straight slam bang horror. But when I started writing novels, I started, blending a little bit of faith and horror and suspense together. So when Destroyer of Worlds was written, that was a straight horror novel. I mean, it was more graphic. It was more of a psychological horror novel, but it wasn't like the other books. And so I decided the readership of Solomon's Grave, and in particular Margaret's Ark, which sort of took off, it's sort of a mixed bag. Not everybody's into horror. It's sometimes people that like to read faith-based books will read it. I mean, I've got a pretty wide audience. So sometimes if you really go to something extremely different than your other books, you want to change your name.
Yeah.
So
It makes sense.
yeah.
Sure.
So G. Daniel Gunn, which is just my first and middle name switched, and my mom's maiden name. Don't try to cash any of my checks because you know that. I'm literally a son of a gun, which is pretty cool. Hi, Mom. Hi, Dad.
Oh, geez.
So, but yeah, so I just used that.
That's really neat. And are there for the different work, do you have different styles and content that you would that readers might see in these things? In addition, as you were saying, you have more biblical based type themes, mythology, things like that in the stories under Dan Keohane. G. Daniel Gunn, a little more brutal, as you were saying a little bit. Is there a difference in the way that you approach the writing of those, or
No.
no?
I don't think so. I think my voice is the same. And my voice tends to be different in each novel anyway. It depends on the characters,
Yeah,
I
right,
think, because I
right.
tend to, I don't write first
Quiet,
person.
I thought.
Yes, it's very, I don't do a lot of inner thinking dialogue. I just write it from their perspective. So like Margaret's Ark has, 16 characters in it, but 4 or 5 main characters, but I tend to write from their perspective. So depending on who the character is, it could be a very quiet or it could be a very loud, like Nightmare in Grease Paint.
Yeah, just the opposite. You're
Yeah,
right. Yeah.
L.L. Soares and I, that is a,
Well, he was one hell of an influence going the other way.
oh yeah, him and I, because I'm kind of more of a quiet,
Yeah.
sort of, and Lauren is just, let's
Yeah.
just blow up the building. So he and I had
Yeah.
a blast.
And for people who don't know, that's a novella.
That's
It's about
a
like
novella.
half a novel that you
Yep.
did with L.L. Soares,
Right.
Soares.
Yep.
And they can look for that under your name, G. Daniel Gunn.
G. Daniel
with,
Gunn, right?
Lauren.
Just came out. It's coming out it's an ebook form now, but it'll come out as a printed anthology from Sam Hain.
Oh,
in
nice.
October.
Oh, that's great. Sam Hain's doing great work.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
for those people who don't know the company Sam Hain, it's actually pronounced Samhain.
Ah,
But
sorry.
No, but now the name has to be pronounced Sam Hain, because if you were to pronounce the way it's spelled is S-A-I-M, like the old Celtic Druidic
Siam.
ceremony, Sam Hain, but it's Samhain as it's normally pronounced. But the problem is that if you were to spell it if you said it as it's supposed to be said, people wouldn't be able to find it online.
They wouldn't be able to
They wouldn't be
search
able
it,
to spell
yeah.
it. So what do you have for your latest material coming out? Is that one of your latest ones?
That one's the latest one to come out. Lauren and I's our novella, and my last one to come out before that was probably Plague of Darkness, which is under my real name.
Oh, nice. That's
Which-
a beautiful cover. And what
Yeah.
company is that?
This book actually I put out myself. I did that.
Really?
Yeah. It was. I mean, I've done small press and I've put things out myself. It's just it's depending which one. But this one, as I said,
How'd that work
it's
for
out.
you?
It worked great. I
Good,
mean, it does
good.
work well. The thing is, when you write in a narrow market like horror, we have publishers. When you decide to make biblical horror, Christian horror, whatever you want to call it, I think your market gets this thin.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Margaret's Ark was my first venture into that because I had an agent and we were trying to sell. We were actually getting full-page letters from major publishers. We really like this book, but we just don't know how to sell it. We don't know how to spell it. We don't know how to sell it. Fine, I'll sell it.
Wow.
So, but
What's a classic now? I mean,
It is a
yeah,
classic.
many people have read that.
oh yeah, and actually, I'm going to be. There's a high school class this fall that's going to be having it as their reading.
Oh, really?
Quiet reading. I was like, yes.
Hey, that's
I said,
awesome.
I'll come in and talk to them.
Fantastic.
So that's pretty cool. Sold 10 books that way.
Yeah, really. And well, you just keep doing it, man. That's great.
Yeah.
You also write nonfiction genre. You do film reviews,
Yeah, oh, yeah.
and things like that. Where can people find the reviews, first of all? And tell
Well-
us a little bit about that.
Well, I write the reviews for Cinema Knife Fight, which
Oh, Nick Cato's group.
yeah.
Lauren Soares and Nick
Yeah,
Cato
yeah,
writes for it. Lauren, Mike Aruda.
Yeah.
We get a whole plethora of reviewers.
Cinema Knife Fight is
Cinema Knife Fight.
number one on
Yeah.
that stuff.
CinemaKnifeFight.com.
Yeah.
And so I tend to do the science fiction or the more bizarre, a little independent, but sci-fi
Right on.
reviews. I do.
I don't know how you find the
So.
time with kids
Yeah.
and work
Yeah.
and working on your fiction. That's a good dedication, my friend.
Yeah, actually, I have too much time now because my youngest just graduated high school. So all of a sudden, it's like, I'm getting old.
Nah,
Great.
no,
Yeah,
not at
yeah.
all.
So-
And are you still doing short stories?
Yeah. I try to focus on the novels, and if I'm being good, I reward myself with a movie review or a short story.
Well, would you like to read something for us?
Sure.
Anything new coming up? Something we should be looking for?
Nothing new. The most recent, really, I guess, the only other new thing is the New England Horror Writers. We just released our newest anthology,
Tales,
Wicked Tales, the Journal of the New England Horror Writers, Volume 3.
And I would like
Check
to
that
thank
out.
you because I know you were one of the founding members of the New England Horror Writers.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's good stuff. It has led to a lot of great things.
We need to
Yeah.
get Dan back and talk to him at length. hopefully you'll come back at a later time.
Absolutely.
Beautiful, great. Yeah, you're going to read for us.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. I'll read for Plague of Darkness just because I had the Nightmare in Grease Paint Clown story is only an ebook, so it's tough to drag the whole computer in here.
Well, yeah.
So, quick setup on this. Four main characters are trapped in a house for most of the story. It is a couple that, there was an old church, they moved out, they closed, and the couple that used to go, they bought the house. It was deconsecrated. Long whole story. Someday I'll tell you where this came from.
Okay. So it's based on a real story?
No, but the idea of decommissioning a house and making it into a church
Okay.
and making it
I
into a
gotcha.
house is real.
Okay.
The idea for the story came during a church service. Where
Really?
it was going long, so I started imagining the windows going black and we're all being trapped in there
Trapped
forever.
inside.
And then like the next day I went, that's a book.
Boy, I love it
That's a
already.
book.
Yeah, this is another one I got to put on my list tonight.
Yeah,
so
really.
so Gem, Gem it's from her perspective in this chapter, but so she's just the neighbor that really doesn't, the neighbor girl, she's a teenager, doesn't get along with the couple who just renovated this church and now it's a house. But she got invited to come see because the former pastor of the church, Joyce, this woman, is coming to bless the house. So in this scene, Jem and Mrs. Watts, Saya Watts, she's Cambodian, but just they hate each other, and her husband Bill. So Saya and Bill, Jem is the teenager, and Joyce is the Episcopal priest blessing the house. And right now, as the house blessing is going on, they're starting to hear voices, and they don't know who it belongs to.
Boy,
but
I
it's
love this.
floating around the house. So they're off doing the house blessing, and Jem's just sitting on the living room couch freaking out. Jem bit her lip to keep from screaming. Someone was in the room. She stood up on the couch and glanced over the back again, half expecting to see one of Elliot's buddies, that's her brother playing football outside the window, Elliot's buddies crouching there with a stupid grin on his face. No one. Things were getting a little too Twilight Zone-y here. The lights dimmed. Jem looked around. The lights weren't even on. Outside was bright and sunny. Inside, everything had an evening quality to it. She stared at Elliot outside, holding the football close to his chest. His buddy Carl was beside him now. They talked and glanced surreptitiously at the house, looking like they were finally giving up and heading inside. They'd better not have put one of their buddies up to sneaking downstairs and spooking the neighbors, because it was also spooking her. Bad idea, Elliot. Problem was, her brother was too boring to be that creative. Jem got off the couch and walked towards the window, intending to ask him before the Watts got back. Tell him to knock it off. You're alone. The voice was behind her. Jem screamed and spun around, swinging her arm. No one there. Again. Joyce ran out of the hallway and into the dining room. Jem, what's wrong? She still held that little black book she'd been reading. The Watts followed a pace behind. Oh, great. Definitely, absolutely time to leave, she thought. Nothing, she said. I'm okay. Bill stepped past the others. His earlier smile had dropped to a scowl. Did you hear something, too? The room was getting darker. Jem found it hard to focus on his face. Was she fainting? She nodded and said, I thought I did. I don't know. He looked out the window. One of those boys, your brother? Mrs. Watts stumbled forward as if pushed, turned around and covered her ears. She moaned quietly, the opposite of Jem's earlier reaction, but no less startled. She stared at her husband and lowered her hands. Bill, who is that talking? Seeing the fear on everyone's face, Jem's only thought was to get outside fast. Listen, things are starting to get weird, so maybe and it's getting dark as well, Joyce interrupted. The minister was looking around the room. Mrs. Watts took a step toward Jem, her once startled expression changing to rage. If you think this game you're playing is funny, Miss Davidson, you're wrong. The candle in her hand was almost melted, some of the wax dripping over the round cardboard base above her fingers. I'm not doing anything, lady. Maybe it's you trying to scare me. You didn't want me here anyway. Maybe I don't. Say, please, Bill interrupted. No, it's true. This girl sneaks into our house more than once and then waltzes inside today of all days, completely uninvited. Jem tried to act casual, walking toward the couch. If she left now, it'd be admitting she was responsible for what was happening. She stopped short of sitting back on the couch. Joyce's voice was quiet but stern. Say, I invited her, you know that, but I'm sorry for causing trouble. I think we should finish the ceremony. She scanned the room. Soon. Finish. Everyone jerked at the voice and the laughter that followed. Jem screeched and finally jumped onto the couch and pulled her feet up. They'd all heard it that time. Why was it getting so dark in here? Mrs. Watts stared at her. What now, Jem? One of your friends waiting in a closet with a monster costume? Say, please. Jem shouted. No, you're crazy. This house is haunted. With an edge of uncertainty, Bill said, There are no such things as ghosts, Jem. Let me run downstairs in case someone's hiding down there. No. The desperation in Joyce's voice held him back. She walked to the living room and stood in front of the coffee table. "We need to finish the ceremony." Her hand shook. "Joyce," said Bill, "don't tell me you think," but he didn't finish. Her attempt at a smile didn't hold. No, of course not, but something feels wrong here. That wasn't a child's voice, and the room is getting noticeably darker, at least to me. I don't understand what's happening, but the only thing that makes sense is to finish. "Nothing's happening," Mrs. Watts screamed. She no longer pretended to be angry. She looked terrified. There are other concerns in the world besides ghosts. Joyce opened the book and, without waiting for a response, read, "The effect of righteousness will be peace." The light in the room faded. Darker, darker, someone slowly turning a dimming switch. Jem felt claustrophobic. She had to get out of there. On the other side of the tall windows, Elliot and Carl had spread out, not yet content to go inside. The sun shone bright and cloudless over them, except its light didn't make it through the glass. Maybe the windows were tinted. An opaque, smoky darkness spread along their edges like black frost. Jem focused on her brother. Her throat was too tight. She had no voice. Instead, she sent a mental scream for help, praying Elliot would smash through the window and rescue his big sister. Joyce was shouting, "And the result of righteousness, tranquility, and trust forever." Elliot wound back for a throw. "Look at me," Jem pleaded. "My people will abide in secure dwellings." Somewhere far away, Jem heard laughter. The darker the room, the louder the voice, laughter running like a creek under more laughter. "God, please help me. If this is all my fault, I'm sorry." And in quiet resting places. But God didn't live here anymore, did he? Mrs. Watts whispered, "Bill, what's going on?" The darkness had a physical presence, filling up the house like dirt in a grave, wrapping around Jem's head. The only clear thing she could see was the center of the window across from her, Elliot releasing the football in a long, arcing path to his friend. Joyce screamed, "Unless the Lord builds the house, their labor is in vain who build it. Let us pray." Then the world was swallowed up in darkness.
Wow.
Hope that wasn't too long.
No, that was
Wow.
great. Jeez.
That's under the first 25 pages.
Yes,
It's
that's
gonna
the
get
first chapter, yeah.
crazy.
Thank you very much, Dan. This
Oh,
was
you're
it
welcome.
was a
Thank you.
pleasure talking. And like I said, we got to have you back and spend a lot more time.
Oh,
Yeah, it's
that'd be
good
awesome.
stuff. And a lot of your short stories and so on are available. They've been published in so many different areas. So
Yeah.
if people look up your name, you do Google search for your work, Amazon.
Yeah,
It'll be great.
dankeohane.com. I
Yeah.
have
Yes.
links.
Oh, you got your website, dankeohane.com.
Great.
You just can't spell it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
Appreciate
sir.
it.
Thank
Got
you.
it, man.
All right.
Awesome.
And we'll be right back with our next interview. We're here with our second interview of the evening. This is Patrick Lacey. Welcome, Patrick.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, our pleasure. Patrick Lacey was born and raised in a haunted house. He currently spends his nights and weekends writing about things that make the general public uncomfortable. He lives in Massachusetts with his wife, his Pomeranian, his cat, and his muse, which is more than likely trying to kill him. Follow Patrick on Twitter at Patrick C. Lacey, or find him on Facebook. You can also visit him on his website at patricklacey.wordpress.com. Welcome.
right.
It's all yours.
Thanks. So I just wanted to reference a few of the books that you've been in. First is the Bugs Anthology from Great Old Ones Publishing.
Which you're in as well.
Yes, I am.
Shout out to you.
Thank you.
That's nice of you.
Yeah,
That's what I'm here for.
Yeah.
Spread the love.
Thanks. Enter at Your Own Risk, Dreamscapes into Darkness from Furbolg Publishing.
Mhm.
That's a great story
Is
in
that
here.
Alex and B.E. Scully?
Yes,
Yes.
it
Yeah,
is.
yeah, great people.
I just had a review of this published on Hell Notes. And Chiral Mad, the first in the series. There's 2 out, and the 3rd is coming out soon. But
And that's my very first acceptance ever. So.
Is
Oh,
it?
really?
That's what
In
I was
Chiral
gonna
Mad?
ask you.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
The story in here is called
Send Your End.
Send Your End,
Mhm.
yes. And I actually have a question that I was going to ask you in our interview about this story. Oh, I have a comb in here.
As one does in a book. Common.
Yeah, I find
And-
forks, all sorts of stuff in mine.
rodent.
Yeah, rodent, you know.
Wow. Widowmakers,
Mhm.
which we're also in together.
Correct, yes.
Is there anybody not in Widowmakers?
No, this is,
That's
this
a
is
huge book.
Yeah, it is a
Yeah,
big
yeah.
book. And so you have a story in here. So you have a lot of publications, but most recently is your novel that's, or novella.
Novella, yep.
That's out with Sam Hain
It will be out September 1st
Oh,
to the
In-
general public.
in ebook.
Yes, ebook only for now
And
at
that's
least.
A Debt to Be Paid.
Mhm.
And you're going to read from that tonight.
Yes, I'll be
after
reading the
our
first chapter.
Interview. Okay.
World premiere, so.
good.
Mhm.
Excellent. I just read that yesterday.
Oh, you
actually.
did read
I
it?
did.
Oh,
I did. You
excellent.
sent
Okay.
it and
We'll
I read
talk.
it.
We'll talk.
Okay. So I wanted to ask you, after reading that actually, I noticed that you sort of have a theme in your writing. You seem to be a champion for the underdog.
Mhm.
And there's sort of a theme present in your work where someone at a disadvantage is fighting for their life. And is there a reason behind this? Maybe something that drives you to write about people struggling with mental illness or other similar challenges? I noticed that in a lot of your stories.
I just like lead characters who have a lot of problems. I think mentally ill people in the underdog, usually in horror, not only do they have to deal with the bad stuff, whether it's a monster or a haunting or a serial killer, but they also have their own demons. And I think oftentimes that can be a good parallel. So for instance, the one in the Dreamscapes, it's about a boy who's mentally ill, doesn't have too much going on in his life that he likes, and he finds sort of a parallel universe that almost seems better than this real world. So I don't know, I just think that they're interesting characters in that respect, and I think that you can do a lot of parallels with the horror and how they interact with their disabilities and such. So I don't know. I didn't even realize that was a theme, so thank you for pointing that out. So.
And he was bullied
Yes.
quite a bit, and you made that a very compelling component to the. Were you ever bullied?
I was not bullied. Oddly enough, I got along with everybody pretty well, but I think in the case of that story, the bully in this real world, in the other world that I present, there's an opposite version of it, and I think that bullies can be really great villains too.
Yeah, that was a really scary component to that
Glad.
story. Yeah, that was a great way to end that
Yes.
story.
Went out with a
very
bang.
memorable.
Thank you, I
Very
appreciate that.
memorable. Okay, cool. And also, in A Debt to Be Paid, do you have any scars?
I do not have any scars. That's another thing. A lot of characters in my work have scars. I couldn't tell you why. I think it's just interesting and it sets them apart. In this particular piece, the main character has a scar on her forehead, and it seems to tingle when certain aspects happen. So I thought it was just a nice little thing to throw in there, whether or not it's actually connected or if it's just psychological. It's up to the reader.
Because I have scars, so I kind of connected with that.
Yeah.
All right. So in the dedication to A Debt to Be Paid, you say that your wife was the one who inspired you to write, and that she said to just do it. So what was stopping you before that?
Just do it.
Yeah.
Just write it.
Just do it.
Yeah.
Just do it. So,
Not affiliated with the Nike logo at all.
So tell us about that.
I think effort. It seemed kind of scary to just write about a big idea. I just had no idea how to go about doing it. So I would go to Barnes & Noble and take out all these books about writing. And then eventually she just said, well, why don't you just try writing something? And I'd done stuff here and there, but I'd never done it in a serious way. So I did it, and I must have done maybe 50 short stories before I got one published, and then with the novella, I had written 4 novels and 1 other novella before I actually got that. So I wanted to make sure that by the time I submitted something, I felt comfortable with it. So there were years of me I'd write a story knowing I wasn't going to submit it, but I know that I learned something about the craft, so I could put it aside and keep trying it until I
You
was
could
finally
probably
ready.
also use those stories later on as fodder for ideas, or even build on them.
Yeah, there's been a couple that I've edited and have subsequently gotten published, and there's
yeah.
some that I've picked pieces from it that
Yeah.
I can probably never
Yeah.
use it again. But you're right, little ideas from old stories. Never throw away your stories, because you can remember something. Oh, I used that 10 stories ago. You can add it to your work in progress. So
Great.
Was A Debt to Be Paid built off of Cold Call that was published in the Horrors zine?
No, but I think they kind of are related. So with a debt to be paid, the elevator pitch is a woman who's been recently diagnosed with schizophrenia receives a strange letter in the mail for night school, an application for night school. She fills it out and starts seeing shadowy figures, whether or not they're related to her illness or something supernatural. You can read the book and find out. But with Cold Call, it involves a woman who kind of curses her current life. She's a single mom. She's super busy and all that. And one drunken night, when she's out with her friends, she says that she'd wish she could start over and have a new life. Then she starts receiving strange phone calls, cold calls, if you will, from a salesperson who seems to have heard what she said, and odd things start happening from that phone call. So I think I'm just interested by different forms of media, whether it's a letter or with Send Your End, the internet, and how they cross over into the real world, I guess. And even with the window in the Dreamscapes story, I just think it's interesting to have these little, whether it's media or just an image, and how it crosses over with the real world. I don't know. I find that interesting. So.
Mm-hmm. And when I was reading Send Your End, it actually made me wonder, have you ever done any research for a story and regretted it, like shocked yourself to the point? I've actually done that myself.
Yeah.
So when I was reading that, it made me wonder, have you ever done that? Have you ever?
I was doing, I don't even remember what it was, but I was doing research for a story about snuff films, which is films when people supposedly really get killed. And I found, I forget the name of the site, but it was supposedly some site where there were no restrictions. Mm-hmm. It was, I forget the term, but there was no one web server, so users could kind of upload them at their own risk, and there's really no way to shut it down. So I guess there was just a lot of horrible stuff. So I decided what would happen if there was a website where people uploaded their suicides, and that kind of fascinated me, because how would they be uploaded if the person is then gone? Would it be a supernatural element? I'm not sure, but that definitely stemmed from doing some research that it got real. It went to dark places.
Oh my God. Okay, so well, you actually answered one of my questions about how, what your background was, because you've published so much in so many leading publications at such a young age, and you answered about how much you read and how much you wrote. So what can we expect from you in the future?
Well, the novella drops on September 1st. I have a full-length novel that will be in ebook and print in July from Sam Hain as well.
Great, congratulations.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
What's that called?
That is called Dreamwoods, and that's kind of an amusement park haunted attraction type thing going on. But
love them, yeah.
Yeah,
that's
that
great.
one, that was
That's
a good, that one was a lot of fun to write, because it's very supernatural, and I could just have, there's a haunted vending machine in it. So we'll put it that way. I could just kind of do whatever I wanted and not have to explain it. So that's definitely one of the funnest things I've ever written. And they have another manuscript of mine, so I should be hearing back shortly on that.
Good for you.
Good. You going to read for us?
Yes.
Yep, excellent.
I'll be reading the first chapter in A Debt to be Paid. I don't think I think the elevator pitch I gave earlier should be enough for that. It should seem pretty self-explanatory. So, chapter 1. The woman came out of the store and walked to the car, smiling as she saw the girl through the passenger window. The girl was playing with one of her dolls that she'd packed. She made it talk and jump and dance, and for a moment, the woman imagined a voice coming out of the doll's mouth, a voice that she herself had been hearing for a long time. She shook her head and walked a little faster, not breathing until she was in the car and the door was shut behind her. The heater was a shock against the cold outside, a bitter winter breeze that made her teeth chatter. The girl smiled. "Did you get me a snack?" "Of course, I got your favorite, M&Ms. She slid the candy over to the girl and ran a hand slowly through her hair as the girl tore into the pack and tossed a handful of shells into her mouth. The woman thought about lying back and shutting her eyes for a few moments, but that was out of the question. They'd been driving straight through the night thus far, and although they'd only been parked at the rest stop for 20 minutes, it was long enough for someone to catch a glimpse, long enough to recognize their faces from the television and newspapers. She couldn't afford to sleep just yet. She needed somewhere secluded. And there were other things out there that could take notice, not just the police and bystanders. She turned up the heat, but it didn't do any good. She still shivered, rubbing her hands together and blowing warm air into them. The girl went on playing and chewing her candy, silently mumbling to herself, still not totally aware of the situation. Suddenly, the car seemed too quiet. The woman needed noise, background filler to keep her mind steady, to fight the fatigue she'd felt since last week when she packed as many of their belongings as she could before Brian got home from work. She had written a note, but she tossed it into the trash before she left. Because Brian didn't understand. He tried, humored her every now and then, but when you got down to it, he thought she was out of her mind. It was a fair assumption, but from where she was standing, there was nothing crazy about what was happening. She turned on the radio. There was a baseball game on, announcers rattling off plays and crowds cheering in the background. She changed the channel. There were a few news stations on, but she didn't want to risk it. If the girl heard her name on the radio, she'd start to wonder. Finally, the woman settled on a talk show, some politician being interviewed about health care or gun laws or whatever. She didn't listen to details, but she was thankful that it drowned out her thoughts. "Where are we going next?" the girl asked. "Can we go see Grandma?" The woman smiled, and the girl didn't notice the sadness in her expression. She pushed a loose strand of hair of the girl's hair behind her ear. "No, honey. Remember I told you we need to go on an adventure with just us for a while?" The girl nodded and ate another M&M. "Yeah, but when can we go back home? I miss school and Dad and my bike." "I know you do. We'll be able to get back someday, but right now we need to get away from bad things that only you can hear." "That's right, sweetie. And once they leave us alone, I swear we'll go back home and things will be just like they were before." "Pinky swear?" The girl held out her hand. "You bet." She curled her pinky around her daughter's and put the car in reverse. She pulled into the highway and took a sip of coffee she'd grabbed at the convenience store, willing it to wake her. She yawned and cracked her neck, watching the road and the moon, and wondered where their next stop was. "Hey, Mommy?" The woman tensed. She thought the girl had nodded off. "Yeah? I'm glad I can't hear or see the things that only you can. They sound really scary." She was about to tell the girl everything would be just fine and that she wouldn't let the things get to either of them when the radio turned to static. One moment the politician was ranting, and the next there was a high-pitched white noise that sounded vaguely like screaming. And then came a commercial, though she knew immediately it was not a normal advertisement. "Are you looking to go back to school? Are you interested in pursuing a new career or simply gaining new knowledge and experience? Well, we have a solution for you." The woman reached to turn off the radio, but not before the other voice cut in. "You can keep running, but you have to sleep sometime, and when you do," she pressed the button, and the car was silent again, save for the drone of the engine and the highway wind beating against the exterior. If the girl had noticed, she made no indication. They drove in silence the rest of the way before pulling into an empty parking lot. She cut the engine and lights. The girl had finally fallen asleep. The woman grabbed a blanket from the back seat and placed it over her body. She stirred, said something in her sleep, and turned away. The woman sipped her coffee and looked into the night, telling herself the shadows were not moving and there were no shapes advancing on her. She kept the radio turned off.
Jeez. That's great.
It was excellent.
Thank
That's
you.
great.
It's really good, and I
Appreciate
loved
that.
seeing the change. Seeing her as a young mom with Meg as a child, and then later on.
Yeah.
It was really neat to
Oh, I
see.
appreciate
Yeah,
that.
It was a great story.
Thank you.
Well, thank you
Well
very
done.
much,
Thanks for
Patrick.
having me.
Geez, I hope you decide to come back sometime.
Anytime. Name the date.
You got it. Thank you, and thank you for
Well,
not
let's
eating
not
a
get-
taco, throwing the
let's not
mic
get
down, or
ahead of
wearing
us.
green.
That's what I'm here for.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks.
Thank you. Good evening and welcome to the third interview. We're here with Kyle Rader. Going to read a little bit about Carl, and then we're going to let Phil take over and do the interview. Kyle Rader is a writer who doesn't like to color inside the lines. He's eating a taco. He has written across multiple genres with the express goal of doing the unexpected and, more importantly, not boring his readers. Apparently the viewers also. His most recent publications have appeared in Dark Moon, Eclipse Magazine, Insomnia Press, and the Rusty Nail Magazine. He can be followed on Twitter at your old pal Kyle, or on his website, www.kylerader.wordpress.com. He lives in New Hampshire and enjoys playing guitar poorly, yelling at his television, and annoying his long-suffering girlfriend. Now his wife, right? Yeah.
Unfortunately for her.
You're going to finish this by the time we do the interview, right?
Maybe.
Who was way too awesome to be hanging around with him. Phil, it's all yours.
All right, very good, very good. Kyle, myself, and you met through the National Writers Association, specifically Greg Norris. Greg Norris, editor and writer and screenwriter for some things as well. And he brought me into that group, and you were in that group when I met you. And there was a number of things I thought when I heard some of your writings, and I'll ask you some of those questions, because I really don't even know the answers at this time myself, even though I've known you for many years now.
Neither do I.
I do have to say that some people that you know, Douglas Poirier, another member of our writers group, he personally said to me privately, first time ever announced to anybody, that he thinks that you are an up-and-coming superstar.
Thank you.
And I had to agree with him when I heard that, because when a couple of your stories were in books that we published for Great Old Ones Publishing.
Certainly were.
And he loved your first one, as did Greg Norris, who edited the book in Canopic Jars. But I love yours in Bugs, Tales That Creep, Slither, and Crawl, and that's why you were here, because those stories impressed both me and Doug, as well as numerous other people who've read them. Plus, you have many other publications, as Tony just read. So let me ask you some questions. Well, actually, before I ask you a question, I want you to introduce yourself. Why don't you tell who you're from, where you're from, and things like that?
Yeah. So I'm Kyle. New Englander, pretty much.
Yeah, your mouth is full.
A little bit. Yeah. Hey, it's the
You can't mumble.
The Taco Society, man. What am I gonna do? Eat a pancake? Yeah. So I'm born, raised in New England. Bounced around quite a bit in my formative years. Live in Nashua now. Like you said, I was still part of the Nashua Writers Group a little bit. Play guitar poorly. I yell at the TV a lot. My wife is too awesome to be hanging around with me, but she's not going to watch this. She finds my writing crass. What else do you want to know?
Well, let's get into the questions.
My favorite color is green. I'm an Aries.
You're taken, so all the women, well, what are you going to do?
Well, I'm not that taken.
So
Your wife doesn't watch this, I can tell.
let's get the questions in, because when you said the word crass, that is
yes.
a good lead in. But let's first talk about what type of stuff you write. This is the question I have for you. The first one is, there are many types of fiction you dabble in. I mean, you know, most of the people that are in that writers group do genre fiction, but you dabble in a bunch of other things. However, it seems you write mostly genre material. Why is that?
Because real world is boring. It's boring to write about, somebody finding their aunt's old tea set in the attic after she dies and, reminiscing about that or something. That's great for some people. I think that's really boring. I mean, why wouldn't you write about, like that tea set coming to life and, growing to be 8 feet tall and, destroying Tokyo? That's a lot more fun to me. I mean, if it's not going to be fun, then why do it? Life's too short. If it's not fun, why don't do it? And for me, it's not that I couldn't write like that. I mean, I see no reason not to. I mean, it'd be a challenge for me, but for me, I don't want to bore myself. And I want to write something that you're not going to expect. I mean, if it's, a tale about Vikings and mummies, or if it's a tale about something really off the wall, like furries, or people who fall in love with inanimate objects, I'm going to do that.
So there's no subject that's taboo. You would write just about anything.
Just about anything. I mean, it's all out there to be used. It's all on how you do it, though. I mean, there are some topics that are obviously for everybody very, very touchy. Like, for example, you could not probably write a funny story about a rapist. Mm-hmm. That would be very foolish to try unless you were the world's funniest human being. And even then, it's something you probably don't want to do. if you want to write a story about a rapist, then you're going to have to make that person compelling enough to keep reading. I mean, that person is not going to be someone you like. The reader is not going to like them, but if the reader does like them, then they got their own problems, right?
I agree.
So I don't think you should be afraid to test yourself, and no matter what you do in life, in writing, in anything, people are going to like it or people aren't going to like it, and you have to learn to have a thick skin in this
Oh, yeah.
whatever it is we do, make believe, fairy tale story time. I mean, I've learned it the hard way. I'm sure we've all learned it one way or the other.
Oh, yeah.
Yep, no doubt. And that brings me into my second question, which is a lot of your dark fiction actually has humor in it. Explain.
Well, you got to break things up. A little levity goes a long way. I mean, you can do a story that's just completely dark and depressing and dreary, and at the end of the day, your readers who read it probably will want to kill themselves. My story in Bugs is probably the most depressing story I've ever read. Actually, funny story about that. When I was writing it, I myself became so depressed that I sat in the dark and drank a bottle of rum and watched Homeland. I couldn't do anything else.
After you finished it or while you were doing it?
It was the first draft, middle part of it. I just couldn't function anymore. So sit there with some Sailor Jerry and watch Homeland.
But that's when you know it's working. You hear writers crying, when they write really either horrific scenes or heartbreaking scenes. You were affected so much you had to take a break and have a drink and get your mind off.
That never happened to me before. It hasn't happened since, but man, yeah, that was not good, and that taco wasn't good either. It's talking back.
Just so the viewers know, which story is it you're talking about where you did this?
It's in Bugs, Tales That Slither, Creep, and Crawl. It's called Jesus Saves, and it has nothing to do with Jesus, and no one really gets saved. Well, it depends on your point of view. You'll have to read the story, people.
Yeah, it's a very interesting story because there's no slashers, there's no monsters, it's a really good story though, but people should read it, no doubt. Now, next question I have for you is, I've known you for a good many years, as we discussed, but I've never heard specifically from you what authors, artists have influenced you. And with how different each story you write seems, I'm just curious about that. Because, again, you read your story, we comment, and whatever, but I have no idea where your influences come from, and whether it's movies or books or authors specifically.
That's there's so many. I don't like to limit myself to just one person, because I think even if you have your influences, even if you have people that you look up to, you definitely, if you're striving to be them or be like them, you are doing them and yourself a disservice. You need to strive to be you, the next Phillip, the next Tony. That's who you should be. In terms of my writing influences, things like when I was a kid, I would read a lot of Jules Verne. Love Jules Verne. Even to this day, I still love Jules Verne.
That sparked your imagination.
It really did. I just gobbled up everything of Jules Verne, and this was when I was very small. I was, 8, 9 years old.
That's
and
amazing. That's great.
Still
That's
have,
a great story.
Still have my grandmother who's passed on. She got me these leather-bound collections of Jules Verne, and she also got me of Mark Twain, but I read those recently. Mark Twain, I don't like him. But Jules Verne, there's these beautiful hardbound leather collections. You got 20,000 Leagues, you got Journey to the Center of the Earth, 80 Days, wonderful. So that really got the juices flowing.
That's great. You don't hear him cited that often as an influence. I love hearing that.
And actually, in here, I brought something. This is actually my first rejection letter from 1990 from the Nintendo Corporation. I remember this. My mother kept this. I created a handwritten pencil idea for a video game, right? And I put so much thought and effort into it, and I sent it in. I'm like, oh, they're going to take it, and I'm going to be rich, and I'm going to buy all the stuff I want. And sure enough, I got a very nice rejection letter. I won't read all of it, but basically it says, due to legal reasons, we can't. I mean, they clearly know that they were dealing with a child. They let me down very nicely. Although I'm reading it now, it says, ideally, we would like to be able to take your idea and all of the Nintendo fans who write in and make them into real games, and real is underlined. I don't know what that's trying to tell me. But yeah, my first ever rejection letter, my mom saved it. I thought I threw it away because I was so...
That's a nice thing to have.
That was the end of the world for me. I'm like, oh, someone telling me I suck at 9. Oh, it's the hard road ahead.
You've got time for one quick last question.
All right.
All right. Your tattoos.
My tattoos.
They actually have a meaning based off of your writing. You told me. Why don't you let folks know what we're
Well,
referring
I'm
to?
hoping that all the different shades of green are like making my arm like I'm real. No. Oh. Well, that sucks. Yeah. So my tattoos on this arm, in particular, not all of them. Let me get it up here. They are based on some of my published stories, and I don't know how many people can see this, but on my website, I just did a very nice,
great,
lengthy blog about my tattoos with pictures, and KyleRader.net or at WordPress or wherever you want to find it. So one of them is from Bugs. It's a little bit of the red you can see there, and then that one there is from the Canopic Jars. And I've got one from a story forthcoming here that is it's from like gothic, like Edgar Allan Poe, H.P. Lovecraft type of story. Again, I'm dabbling in other things to see if I can do it or not.
You know what? If you're that prolific, you're going to have a hell of a problem with running out of space. That's a good problem to have, right?
I have 2 legs left, and after that, I don't know. I think we're
You
screwed.
can use your right, maybe.
Yeah.
She's got more tattoos than me.
There you go. So
We've got to go to the readings here.
fair enough. All right. Well, which story you want to read today?
Do you want your viewers to be suicidal or entertained?
Well, as long as we got PG-13 or less.
Oh, we better go with Bugs then.
All right. Sounds good.
Let's see if I can find it. You put me way in the back.
I think I put you right in the center.
No, you put me way in the back, Phillip.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh my God.
Before Eric Brown, and there you are, Carl. There you are.
Ugh.
Yeah,
Page-
that's literally the middle.
Page 227. I thought we were friends. This is how he treats his friends. Okay, so this is called Jesus Saves. And again, Jesus isn't in the story, so sorry. I'd been feeling it for quite some time. The kind of disappointment one of my generation has grown complacent to, that most can't even be bothered to feel until it slow boils into a rage-induced cancer, feasting and going where it pleases until it turns us as dead on the inside as we feel on the out, each and every day. It always seemed that way for me. I could never be smart enough or good enough to get ahead just a little bit. I suck at life, or the colloquial acronym FML, were commonplace for me. The thought that I was doing far better than most gave me no comfort. Depression closed ranks around my every waking thought and followed into my dreams, my last wondrous bastion against the cruelty of the world. Most days, lifting my head off the pillow was an act of willpower, nothing short of mythical. Routine. The routine was always there. Even on those days when the pressure of the world proved to be too far substantial to rally against. The modern-day bully, waiting at the bus stop after school, holding me down by the throat and driving the spirit from me with its knee. Wake up, drive to work, sit in a room with no windows amongst the other aimless souls, drive home, eat, sleep. Maybe get enough respite that your brain can shut out the crawling monster called regret. Rinse and repeat, over and over again until you die, alone, unloved, and forgotten. There came a day when I lusted for it to be over. I craved for the end so I could just stop. I tired of allowing life to use me as its passive-aggressive punching bag and figured that this big blue ball could hurtle through the emptiness of space without the likes of me. None would miss me. Not really. My family would make one last appearance at whatever pauper's funeral the state deemed sufficient, and then they'd go back to the respective holes they'd scurried out of, if they could be bothered to show at all. I barely spoke to my coworkers, save for the occasional nod and grunt of acknowledgement. There might be some gossip about me, words spoken in restrooms and the parking lot so as not to upset the precious status quo, but nothing more. A rather fitting epitaph for my time amongst them, hushed whispers in the hallway. The resolution to act gave me a sense of relief. The plan assimilated itself into the dreaded routine, a virus, a parasite, an insect, leeching away at my enemy, manipulating it for my own purposes. Those 2 weeks I spent plotting my suicide were amongst the happiest of my short life.
Wow, that's great. I did read that as you were reading it. I recalled when I read the book for review. So that was great. That's good.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Geez, we really enjoyed having you on. Will you come back again sometime?
I'll come back and eat more tacos. Yeah. I'm going to regret this one, I think.
Next time you got to bring some for everybody.
Well,
I'm
I
a
had
little
3 of
selfish.
them, but they were going bad, and I didn't want to hurt anyone except for myself.
Jeez. Yes, you will pay the price tonight and maybe tomorrow morning.
I should have just ate them on the toilet.
That's terrible.
Well, thank you very much. This is the last of our interviews, and we'll be right back. That was quite a show.
It's good stuff.
It was. I think this is the first time we've interviewed 3 people in a one show sitting.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting and kind of surreal with somebody actually eating a taco.
I was going to say,
at the
I
was
want
the
myself a
first.
taco now.
That was a first. Well, we're going to get tacos.
We're going to go get tacos after this. That's right. So I want to, again, I can't thank you guys enough. You're excellent, you're fun, you're great, you're friends, and I just love doing this show with you, and you make it, all of you.
Well, and it was great that the folks drove the distance to come to be interviewed by us, and
Yeah, that's
all
nice.
local authors and all from New England, which is great.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. We're working on teleportation, but right now it's usually driving.
We're not there yet.
Yeah, we're gonna get
It's
at
still a haul, though, for a lot of people.
It is.
even
Well,
though
Dan's got
they're-
an hour and a half drive after this, so.
it. Yeah. Well, actually, no. I just left him bleeding in the alley, so he won't be driving home.
Oh, good, good. Okay, maybe we could drag him for a taco.
It's
then.
fine. I did it for the children.
We have
Everything for the children.
everything for the kids. We have a great show. We're going to vague book a little bit here, but we have a vague book. That's Facebook,
That's
isn't
Facebook
it?
for- Facebook
That's
for
not
Christopher
this-
Golden.
That's
Yeah,
a different show.
He's famous for it.
That's a different show.
That is. We're going to have a show on Halloween. We've got the guests lined up, and you won't believe the guests. I mean, this is
It's gonna be
top-notch
awesome.
talent. It's the higher echelons of horror. It's not Stephen King, but it's the higher echelons of horror, and we are so excited that they've all agreed to come on board. So we'll fill you in more. It's July now, August, September. In September, we'll be able to announce it. But we're very thrilled that we've got that program, and we'll have more coming up soon.
You said it's not Stephen King, but is it Dan Brown?
You're going to get me in trouble, aren't you? Well, thanks, everybody. I really
It's good
appreciate it. Yeah, and
was
we're
a
going to
great
keep
show.
meeting. We're going to keep having programs, and we're going to keep having fun.
Right on. And tacos.
Tacos. Thank you, and good night.